and welcome back to the Fit for Business and Life podcast. The Fit for Business and Life podcast is brought to you in partnership with Sharp Fit for Life and the Business Body Network, improving the performance and transforming busy or overweight professionals, business owners, consultants, and their teams to become fitter, happier, and more confident. The Fit for Business and Life podcast is all about sharing passion, knowledge, and expertise around business and personal performance from our host, Martin Sharp, 30-year change maker in businesses large and smalls, along with special guests sharing their know-how and experience in making changes in business along with themselves. Featuring inspirational stories, insights, tips, and practical know-how, bringing more healthier, happier, and higher achievement to your world. So why not follow this podcast? We're live on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you think podcasts are going to be held. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then please hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We very, very much appreciate your support. So sit back and enjoy this episode of Fit for Business Life podcast, brought to you in partnership with Sharp Fit for Life and the Business Body Network. And our special guest today on the Certain to Change series is Dr Alka Patel, who is a longevity and lifestyle medicine doctor, founder of the Million Hour Club and the proud owner of more health gadgets and trackers than she has handbags. With over 20 years of medical experience, Dr Alka is on a mission to help people live longer and live younger and live stronger, one biohack at a time. She's the creator of the Million Hour Method, using data and devices to make decisions with precision. Known for her unique ability to blend science with storytelling, sprinkling a touch of humor along the way, and Dr. Alka is here to prove that aging isn't inevitable. It's hackable, as long as your toolkit includes science, a curious mind, and a knack for calling chocolate a metabolic experiment. So please welcome Dr. Alka.
Martin.
Go on, chocolate as a metabolic experiment. Go on. You're going to have to justify that one.
Oh, has to be. Come on. We can't deny ourselves some of these pleasures in life, right? But it's all about what is chocolate doing for you. You'll have chocolate. I'll have chocolate. We'll both have a very different experience. We'll both have a very different metabolic experience. We'll both have very different memories of chocolate. Is chocolate something to throw out of the window? No, it's something to really start to understand and decide and make those decisions about what you do with chocolate on the basis of how your metabolism is responding. What do you think to that?
I love it. I also love the fact that you're also the person who mentioned that chocolate is as good for you as broccoli and kale. So when you can put it in that classification, yeah, I'm in. Definitely in. And I think several listeners will be as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, if you can look at chocolate, and it's, there's caffeine in chocolate, and caffeine is, again, branded as something that should be out, and too much of a good thing is not a good thing, which is absolute. But the caffeine has got some very important properties from an anti-inflammatory, antioxidant perspective, which I'm sure we'll get into our conversation. So again, it's about finding out what chocolate, when to eat chocolate, what type of chocolate. It's all there. All the answers are in chocolate.
Yeah, and I remember reading there was an article where someone said that if you get rid of all the high fat, the high sugar, the high caffeine, etc., out of life, you've almost got rid of most of the enjoyment as well. So I appreciate the fact that there has to be some kind of moderation in there as well.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I know we're diving straight into this conversation, but there's also sort of the hygiene hypothesis, Martin, which I'm sure you've come across, as well as that. If we underexpose ourselves to things, we also don't allow our bodies to be able to adapt and compensate. So we know that there's lots of studies which have shown that, for example, in children where they are over hygienic, i.e. not exposed to the usual dirt and debris and what's in the environment, you then don't build and allow your immune system to be responsive. And increasing number of children are then growing up to have allergies, and allergies are on the rise as well. So I think it's, again, understanding how is your body made to deal with what we're exposed to in this ever toxic world as well, without underexposing yourself so much that your body systems don't know how to react and adapt.
Yeah, Yeah, spot on. And I think my kids will be really pleased to know that they all ate dirt when they were younger. In fact, one of them had a partial for sand. So, that was an interesting set of nappies
Okay.
afterwards. But that's a different conversation. But I mean, coming back to specifically what you do, I mean, this is all about how people change and the reasons why people change and what they need to look at when they are going through those kind of changes and transformations personally. And you've set up an entire club, which is the Million Hour Club, which is really helping people, specifically busy professional kind of people, take back some of that control over their life, because many of them might feel like they're in a position where they've kind of had to do things because that's just what either society tells you has to do, the business tells you has to do, the company you work for might be telling you that you have to do, and that can be quite a disabling place.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's this really profound question in that, which is, what is life? And as a busy professional, busy business owner, entrepreneurs, the people that are listening today, it's really thinking about what is life for you, with that title that you hold as entrepreneur or business owner, or whatever that job title that you hold for yourself. Is that really your sort of true essence? What is life all about? And I've been sort of looking at answering this question for myself as well, more recently, Martin. And if you think about it, life is a series of experiences. That's what it is. It's that flow of experience. But how you have that experience then determines what happens next. As you say, life is a constant flux of change, isn't it? And that's that constant flow of one experience to another. But we've got two things that help us to have that experience. Well, three really. One is the body, of course, this incredible vessel of our life. And when you get into the science of how this beautiful, magnificent machine is made, this is what allows us to have the actions that enable us to live the life that we want. But it's governed by two things, one of which is your mind and one of which is your intelligence. And sometimes one overrides the other. And we've got to really think about, how do we make those decisions for ourselves that not only enable us to have prosperity and success on the outside, which is what we want. Ultimately, we want to have success and prosperity. There's no denying that as being fundamental to human life, but also what we all crave and want. And I will defy anyone who says that they don't want this, which is that inner peace and happiness. And how do we then marry both up? And at the center of all of this is what I am deeply rooted in and passionate about, which of course is health, because the healthy human is the one that's going to be able to make the right decisions at the right time. The healthy human is the one who's going to want to live their longest possible life. And that's what I'm here for, longevity, living your longest, healthiest, happiest, richest, most fulfilled life.
Absolutely, but I've known you for years, so I kind of know a little bit of the backstory and things, and that wasn't always true from where you came from. You came from that very traditional kind of medical background, which was, I think you described at one point as being a drug pusher in many cases. So, what was kind of that moment where actually that changed for you? What was the kind of that element where you stopped being a case of, okay, this is just not about just extending life, but actually this is about how do you make somebody have a real nice and healthy life?
Yeah, there's probably a series of catalysts for that. And I see, in my professional life, I see a lot of patients, and we call these sort of teachable moments, when things happen in your life, when you have certain life experiences that then become that catalyst for change, which is what this podcast is all about, isn't it, Martin? And you're quite right. I started off my professional life as a traditional, conventional GP, really thinking this was my forever life, because I felt as though I was thriving in that professional role. And I remember this kind of real, feeling of joy, really. And don't take this the wrong way, but when people would come to me with their sickness, I felt some joy, because it meant that I could take that sickness from you. You could just pop it on into my lap, take away the worry from you, and I would just fix it all and give you back health. And that's what I love to do. And then over time realized that that isn't really what I was doing. I was taking away autonomy from you. By giving you drugs to fix yourself, which wasn't really a fix, I was taking away health from you. And that realization that healthcare and sick care are two very different things. And this came, as you sort of probably alluded to a little bit there, is from my own journey into my own sickness. And of course, from the ashes rises the phoenix, and all of that. From pain comes your power and your purpose. And my own experience with what I now look back at and call burnout, but of course, when you're in the midst of it, you don't know what this is. But I went through a health experience myself where I developed a fever one day many years ago, over a decade ago now, back in 2011, when I woke up with a fever and did what most people would do. No, not crawl back into bed, but actually go to work. Yes, I sort of pushed through my day as a GP, heaving waiting room, patients to see, people to look after, only that night to get back home and let that fever take grip, which meant that I was hospitalized, and I was in hospital for the next 4 weeks and not back in my consulting room for the next 4 months, because my body just did not have the reserve and the energy to fight a simple fever. And when you've had an experience like that, and it sounds very simple when I'm now talking about it, but it was a very sort of close to death experience when my liver was shutting down and my kidney didn't want to play a game anymore. And I really didn't have the energy to survive. I remember my children coming to see me in a hospital bed on my birthday, wishing me happy birthday, mummy. And I didn't really have the energy to enjoy that moment. And all I could think about was, you'll be fine without me, because there's just so much love around you. And my husband was there, and my mom was there, and the biggest thing I had to live for was my children, and yet I didn't have felt the stamina to be able to do that. So yes, you're right, I wasn't always in the space that I'm at now, but in my journey to recovery from my own illness, I had to find a way to take care of myself, which I hadn't been used to doing. Of course, what do GPs do? We look after everybody else. Where are we? We don't need to take care of ourselves. We're too busy taking care of other people. And that's what I'd been doing. But suddenly the compass point north was pointing to me, and I had to learn how to eat better and sleep better and move better and allow other people to have a part in this juggle of busy life with me. I was raising 3 young children, was a partner in a GP practice, had lots of educational attainments that I still wanted to work towards. And so, yes, life was busy. And in that busyness, I'd forgotten about taking care of the one person that meant so much to other people as well.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to do, to get almost like kind of tied up in the busyness of business. And I always find it kind of interesting. Those two words are so almost identical, really. Just one single letter difference, the I and the U, the I and the Y, sorry. And that really kind of explains everything. What is your why? And then you can start to concentrate on yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
And one thing that most people don't know about myself is, actually, I had a similar kind of experience, not to the extent of having things shut down, but when I was doing a big program of works, it was like a £440 million. The IT part of it was just £440 million. It was part of a multi-billion-pound program. And the stress level on that was insane. I was having days upon days where I wasn't sleeping. And at one point, I was in a hotel room. I woke up, my heart was just fluttering like mad, and I found afterwards I was having panic attacks.
Wow.
And again, it was just that close to just being completely burnt out, where I was completely unusable. And I had to literally, at the point where that was happening, just stop and move on, because you can't continue on things like that. And it's it's a dark place to be.
But Martin, by the time your body sends you signals like the ones they're sending you and the ones that got sent to me, there have been soft whispers, which in the busyness of business, we've chosen to ignore. This vessel is incredible. It will tell you exactly what it needs when it needs it. But in the noise of the world, we decide to switch off to that. And then, of course, it's got to send you some big loud shout, like a panic attack or a fever to shut down your organs. And then you have to pay attention.
Yeah. So if you don't make what's the other classic phrase on this one? If you don't make time for your health and wellness now, you're going to have to make time for your illness later. And that's pretty much where you are in your story at this point. So what can happen next? Obviously, because you obviously didn't succumb to all those problems, because you wouldn't be sat here with us now. And we're kind of really hoping you've got a really good outcome for your children at this stage as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what happens next is, again, you may have experienced this, is that change doesn't happen immediately. And that timeline for change can vary from, okay, maybe, the day, the next day, the next week, the next month, or maybe it's over the next decade, when those seeds of change have been sown, but they take time to fertilize and grow and really start to shift your trajectory. So for me, after that sort of period of burnout, as I said, I had to learn how to resurrect myself and really zone in on what I now call the kind of foundation of health, is moving, eating, sleeping, connecting again, and what that meant. And in fact, what I then went on to do is, because I'd found this so difficult for myself, is I wondered how difficult it was for my patients as well, because up until then I'd only been talking about sickness and not really about health. So a couple of years later, I did go on to develop what I now call the LQ, Martin. So your lifestyle quotient, or your longevity quotient, which focuses in on what area of your lifestyle do you need to prioritize in order to develop health, in order to be more exceptionally healthy. And that's a series of questions I still use now in my practice, and with lots of people. It's called the LQ test. But in the process of doing that as well, I again had to go on this, felt I had to go on this journey of self-discovery. And I had a calling, just this feeling, call it a calling, to go to India. And I remember texting my husband, sending my text message saying, I've just got to go and travel on my own and decide what I need to do next in life. And he was gracious enough to say, you do whatever you need to do. So off I went to India, and I went to volunteer there and look after people at the end of their life, which is an extremely humbling opportunity for me. I'd never volunteered before. I'd never been to traveling on my own. I'd never been to that part of India where I didn't even speak the language. So it was an incredible opportunity and privilege to be out there. And that's where I met my very first centenarian. So centenarian, somebody who's over 100 years old. Motu was 106 years old. I'm saying this now with a huge smile on my face, because every time I recall this and recall that feeling of holding the hands of a man who's 106 years old, honestly, it just fills me with the most incredible level of humility, but also courage as well, because having spoken to a man who was 106 years old and asked him how he got there, and his single response to me was, I've been kind to my body, makes me just realize that how kind are we being to this beautiful vessel of life that we have to our bodies. And that was a real moment for me. When you say, what was the moment that made the shift? There's many, of course, but that was a real key moment for me to realize that actually we can be kinder to our bodies, and we can live longer lives if we do that. So that's what I brought back to the UK. And that's when I took my shift really from being a conventional GP, but took all of that knowledge of general practice and GP life with me into this realm of longevity and lifestyle medicine.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, again, you're using really specific language about being kinder to your body, and being kinder to your body doesn't always mean not doing something. In fact, it can mean completely the opposite. It can mean actually doing something, but it's getting that balance right. We've talked about this a few times.
Yeah, exactly. And I think most people, especially business owners who are probably listening to this right now, is that so much about your business, the inner workings of your business. You're tracking so much that's going on in your business, all these data points that you have, money in, money out, number of people who've visited your website, how many people have clicked on your emails, all of this is informatics that you have. But what I find is most people don't understand the data about their body. They don't know how they're made, how they function, what their body needs. And I think this has been a really key sort of eye-opener for me, is that the moment I started showing people data and information about their life, their bodies, their inner workings, that's when things started to feel more real. Because you can have this sense, can't you, Martin? Oh, I didn't sleep well last night. I really ought to get more sleep. And yeah. I'll start on Monday. I'll make sure that I go to bed earlier. But you don't do it. The feeling doesn't translate into action. But I found that once you see data and information and numbers are real. You can't deny them. data is real. And so once you see it, once you've got a visual of it, people are much more inclined to take action as well.
Yeah, and it's really important because, you know, when you think about it from a business perspective, and again, the data shows this, you just have to go to the UK Office of National Statistics and they'll tell you straight away that, you know, many businesses, they go out of business within the first 3 years.
Exactly.
So these can be some of the greatest ideas in the planet. And when you start to dive into these, you know, why did they go out of business? In many cases, it's because they're usually only tracking maybe one number if you're lucky. And that tends to be the bank account. And those businesses that are only tracking just bank account value, there's no control there. You can't really predict what's going to happen. There's so many other variables that are going to happen around your business as well. And it's akin to the typical when you meet people and what's the only thing to track? It's the weight on the scales.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? It's like, what if your body goes out of business? I mean, then you're really in trouble, aren't you? And yet we're putting our bodies out of business because we're not actually looking at any information or the right information or enough information, because everything works together. Everything in your body is synergistic. You can't only look at, like you said, you know, a bank account in a business. You've got to look at everything else that's working in synergy with that. Similarly, you can't just look at your weight and not understand what your glucose is doing, what your hormones are doing, what your gut is doing, because everything works in synergy. And so really, that's exactly what you're doing. You're putting your body out of business way more prematurely than it needs to be. And then when we hear these horrible, tragic stories of people dying earlier than they should, whose length of life has been shortened, we wonder why. But all the answers are there. We've just now, but now, of course, we're living in a beautiful time where we can access all those answers.
Absolutely. And again, it's a lovely that kind of imagery you brought in there, the idea of the body going out of business. And if we bring this back to like real terms of what people are seeing, you just mentioned there about people dying earlier, but the reality that might not necessarily be the thing that's actually the issue straight away, because some people are living longer, but living a lower quality of life now because they've been affected by whether that's cancers, diabetes, osteoporosis, whatever kind of sort of non-communicable diseases are kind of coming off the back of that. And again, that's kind of that almost like visualization now of the reality of your body starting to go out of business.
Right. And what we know now, though, Martin, is if we get to really the kind of the root and the crux of it, is the disease of all diseases is aging. So aging is the root of all the other disease names that we know: diabetes, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's. All of it comes because aging has been speeded up in your body. But the beautiful thing is, there's two incredible things about aging now. Number one is we can measure it. So not your chronological age, not the candles on your cake, which of course we know go up year by year, but your biological age. So the age of your cells, the age of your inner workings, that's what we can measure. And number two, the most beautiful thing is that we can reverse it. We can now go backwards in time, in biological time, as far as your biological aging systems are concerned. And that is a phenomenal thing to be able to do right now, that this time that we're living in, you know, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, we couldn't do that. So we're dealing with a different realm right now. We've got to really think about, how can I make the most of this time that I'm living, where I've got access to data and information and technology that's going to be able to support my health in a way that I can use tech as my tool, not vice versa, but also then to get back to that innate intellect that we all have, that decision-making capacity that we as human beings have got, that we can then use alongside the technology and alongside the testing to make those decisions that are all important for how you want to live out your life. And I think the first thing in all of that is to set a goal, right? Like you do in your business. Back to business, you've got your 5-year plan for your business, you've got your 10-year plan, you know what those goals are, you know what your KPIs are. What is your goal for the length of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, all businesses use these KPIs. I mean, if you look, for example, insurance is a classic, isn't it? You know, they use so many different measures to try and work out, you know, how much they're not going to pay you. Sorry, but not sorry, really. But one of the things, for example, is if you've got a pet, if you've got like cats and dogs and stuff, it's proven to lower stress. So
Right.
therefore, when you're looking for things like travel insurance, health insurance, etc., it has an impact on what your premiums are going to be and actually how much levels of cover you're going to have. So people are already utilizing some of these kind of biomarkers that you've got in your body. Granted, these are all voluntary given at this stage in time to be able to start to give you certain services. I can imagine as we kind of go towards the future and more of this kind of biological information is going to be more available. I mean, for example, we just have to look at what's on the phones these days with what's being tracked with steps, etc. I think it's Vitality Health that do the step tracking,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yes.
And they link it directly to premiums and things. So again, I can imagine over time, more of this information is going to be more used. So the healthier you can actually be and the healthier and happier you are, then it's actually going to have a fundamental impact on the services you're going to be able to
But
purchase.
again, back to business, you've got to be looking at the right data. You've got to be looking at the right informatics. And I would beseech, if there are any insurance brokers, organizations, health insurance providers listening to this, is that really start to think about how are you supporting your clients. Biological age should be what you're basing your premiums on, not chronological age. We're looking at, sometimes you look at outdated data in order to make modern current decisions. It doesn't work like that. You've really got to think about, like, why are we not supporting people who are getting younger biologically and therefore less likely to get those diseases of older age that come with time and come with decline? Why are we not actually prioritizing that? Where are all these insurance companies, Martin?
Yeah, exactly. And again, I'm blessed in some respects. They always say your life is either a guide or a warning for others, and I'm blessed that I've had my own set of guides and warnings with my parents. I have three sets of parents. I've got my mum and her partner, my dad and his partner, and then my partners-in-law, my parents-in-law. Sorry, not partners-in-law.
Okay.
That's the wrong word.
Absolutely.
And all of them are pretty much the same age. They're all kind of in the mid-70s, but the difference between them is just so staggering. So my father was medically retired due to various different illnesses at the age of 55, and I can see the struggles that they go on. My mum and her partner, they're starting to see the kind of declines now. They've been on the last big flight holiday because they now know they can't have the stress of all the change, etc. It took them about 4 to 6 weeks to recover from having a holiday. So it's interesting how that's kind of started to affect them. But we look at my parents-in-law, and they're both bouncing around on mountaintops like mountain goats. So again, they're absolutely fit. My father-in-law will just jump on a bike and do 100 miles cycling because he can.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that difference between biological age and chronological age actually makes a big difference when you get to that age.
Hugely. And it's very tempting to blame genes, isn't it? And to just say, well, it's, you've got good genes, or you've inherited this from parent A or parent B. But that is really not the case. We know that 80 to 90% of our lifespan is determined by our lifestyle, and those diseases that come, the decline, the decay, the disability that comes, is also determined largely by our lifestyle. Your genetics have got a 10, 20, tops 30% part to play, which means that you've got 70, 80, 90% of the gift of life in your hands to control. So you've got to be the controller, the person who holds the reins on your health, and not really give it away to genetics, or I'm just predetermined and got this predisposition, or really also playing into your likes and your dislikes. Like, I like smoking, so I'm going to do that. But actually, the intelligent brain says you're going to shorten your life by doing that. So what are you going to listen to? You're going to listen to the emotion and the craving, or you're going to listen to your logical thinking and thought and reasoning to make your decisions as well? Because that 70, 80, 90%, that gift is in your hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we can look at my family directly. My younger brother, 2 years younger than me, he's already started the same kind of NCDs that my father has, things like diabetes, fibromyalgia, and same set of genes. Reality of things. So and I don't have those kind of markers. We've already had me tested. So
Yes.
it's always good to kind of know these things. And again, you've obviously been through a lot yourself. You've kind of come back from all that kind of potential organ failure or actual organ failure in some cases. You've taken yourself to India. You've had that kind of revelation with regards to meeting Montu, and you've come back and you've changed your life. We can see that very much. You glow, you're an amazing person, you've got so much energy. I've seen you speak in person as well, and you bring that vibrancy to the platform wherever you are actually standing. And really, you've got that real care for people as well. So it's not just a case of just doing this because you feel like you should, but it's actually you're doing this because you know it kind of where it works. You've felt it at your own experience. But how have you kind of translated that to working with others?
How have I translated that to working with others? Okay, that's a really, really good question, because there is that. You need to distill this huge, vast vat of knowledge and information into actually in people's day-to-day practical lives. How does this even work? How does living a long, happy, healthy life actually work? And so for me, that's taken a number of guises. So the first thing I needed to do, Martin, was sort of distill this, what I call the hierarchy of health, which is really about getting the foundation right and thinking about foundational health. Then moving on to think about functional health. How are you actually functioning? What does your body need? How is it made? And then getting into the focal area of what is my goal? Is my goal to sleep better? Is it to live longer? Is it to have better muscles? Is it to be stronger? Is it to become younger? What is that goal? So foundational, functional, focal. And the way to do that is I've developed this methodology, Martin, which you'll know, which I love, which is called the million-hour method, all based on the premise of living a million-hour life. So when I say we should all set a goal for how long we want to live, that's my goal. And the people that I work with, the people that become my clients, my patients, they set that goal to live a million-hour life, which is 114 years. And I don't say this as a fantasy. I say this because this is real and it is possible because of the time that we are living in right now, today, and the accessibility we have to be able to get to test and track our own health, to make those right decisions for ourselves as well. And so I do that in a number of ways with people that really feel aligned to living that longest, healthiest life. Because first of all, you've got to have a reason, haven't you, Martin? You've got to have a purpose. And I think we downplay this as well. So we can talk about all the testing and all the trackers and all the devices, but ultimately, you've got to start with having purpose in life. We know that if you have a reason for putting your feet on the ground every single day, you add 7 years to your life. So 7 years to your life. Now that's a phenomenal number just by knowing why you're getting up in the morning. So in terms of translating that into, well, how does this play out in someone's day-to-day life? I think we alluded to this right at the beginning of the conversation, which was around the busyness of business. So one of the biggest barriers that I've come across when it comes to people thinking about their health is time. I don't have enough time, which is why health then gets put to the bottom of that to-do list. So what I've gone on and done, and you'll love this, Martin, is create a series of what I call time-based biohacks, which means that you can hack your health, i.e. take control of your health, take control of your biology, without time being the excuse not to. And so there's a really beautiful, simple things that you can do day in, day out that take just a minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes. And I know that everybody has got 60 seconds in their day. No matter how busy the busyness of business is for you, you have got 60 seconds for your health.
I love that. And I think this is one of the other side effects as well, because when you're in that position where, things aren't going very well, you're not concentrating on yourself, you're not concentrating on your health, etc. The reality is things take longer than what they should anyway. So,
Right.
you start to work later into the evening, but when you actually sit back and think, how productive was I? How much did I actually get through? Or for example, for people that are trying to work flat out through 8-9 hours without a break, there is only so much mental capacity everybody has. So very quickly you start to exhaust that. So the flip side of it is, if you actually start to concentrate on yourself and taking those times out during the day, you become sharper, more cognitively rich, and you are able to make those decisions quicker. So you actually gain time back.
Right, exactly that. So I'll give you an example then of one of my time-based biohacks on the back of that. I call it the 660. And all that very simply is, Martin, is slowing down your breathing rate to 6 breaths a minute for 60 seconds. And that very simply is breathing in for a count of 4, and then out for a count of 6, and just doing that 6 times in 60 seconds. And the reason this is so important is exactly as you say, you get to take control of your nervous system. You activate what's called your vagus nerve, which is part of your parasympathetic nervous system. P for parasympathetic, P for peaceful. Stops that stress response. And we know that in a stress state, we do not make clear decisions. We can't. So when you're more in a parasympathetic state, you're more in a sense of calm and control, you can make better decisions. And you can use your breath to do that. Your breath is always with you. But of course, as a doctor who also loves technology, who's very data driven, we've also got now tech that can support that. So in my wonderful doctor's bag here, you should always ask, by the way, what does your doctor carry in their doctor's bag that is beyond the stethoscope? I want to go beyond the stethoscope. So I carry with me, for example, I'll show you 2 things, these devices, which I hope you can see. So this one is called the Sensate. And what these devices do is they work on frequency, because of course we are energetic beings. There's a frequency, multiple frequencies within all of us. And if you can activate your vagus nerve, so you turn on one of these, you can pop it on your chest, somewhere where it's going to vibrate. And that vibrational frequency changes the electrical conduction in your body and stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, so that again you have more calm and control. This is one that I like to use at nighttime, for example, really supportive in just enabling that sleep. And I know for you, Martin, we specifically we looked at your cortisol levels, didn't we? We did a 24-hour mapping of your cortisol levels, part of your adrenal stress profile. And at nighttime, your stress hormone was still very, very high. So if you're somebody like that, using a device like this may be very, very helpful. Or here's another one as well that you pop onto your wrist as well. And through the daytime, it can send out different frequencies that are going to alter that vagal tone. So use technology or use your breath, which is always with you as well, to give you that calm, relax. Do the 660. I have a whole sequence of these. And one of my favorites is the 660. And I know earlier, I think you were talking about habits as well, Martin. Like, how do you make what you do consistent? Because change is also about having some consistency and repetition to what you do. And for me, I do the 660 very, very specifically when I open my laptop and in between any meetings and conversations and consultations and calls that I have. So I use this phrase. This is a really good one. I've got this in my course as well. It's when I will. How does this work? So when I turn on my laptop every morning, I will do the 660 and slow my breathing rate down to 6 breaths per minute. When I finish every consultation, I will do the 660 and slow my breath down to 6 breaths a minute. So you can see how one habit that you already have, or one anchor point that you have, can then lead to the new habit that you want to develop as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I do something similar. So again, 660 method. I actually use the little tracking thing on the watch though for it.
Right,
So
yeah.
you've got a little app there, and it kind of just gives
Yeah.
that. So same kind of thing. But I do that every hour. So every hour, I make sure I move away from the desk or whatever it is I'm doing. I take a break. I stretch my eyes across the horizon so that again I've got more than a 1 meter kind of gap between me and the horizon, and grab a drink. And
Yeah.
at that time, when I'm doing that, I'm breathing as well at the same time. So
Yeah.
again, you
Yeah.
don't have to say you have to just do the one thing. You can compound some of these to really get some great benefits as well.
Yeah, stack a hack, right? Keep that, get the best bang for your buck. Like, if you're out walking, for example, can you walk with a weighted vest on, or can you walk with a rucksack on? Because we know that if you can do some weight bearing at the same time as walking, you're remodeling your bones. You're really increasing that bone strength. And of course, fractures and osteoporosis, and as we get older, these are the things that you want to be moving away from, not towards. So why not stack the hacks and, yes, enjoy the walking, but at the same time use it to start remodeling your bones as well.
Marvelous. So again, one of the things we talked about right at the beginning when I was introducing you is around the Million Hour Club. So what is that?
Yes.
What would somebody who would be the right person that wants to join the Million Hour Club, and how would they do that?
So the Million Hour Club is all about setting that aspiration to live a million-hour life. So 114 years of health and happiness and enrichment and fulfillment. And if that's you, then the Million Hour Club is for you. So what happens in the club is a number of things. So we do testing, and testing is really, really important. So as part of the Million Hour method, we look at data. And the one test that everybody has frequently, every 114 days, yes, there is a theme to this, every 114 days, you track your biological age. So if there's one number that is going to give you that direction of travel, it's your biological age. So I send out a finger prick blood test that you do, comfort of your own home. You do the test. The lab then does their magic in terms of actually looking at the very specific biomarker that is related to aging. And then we have your result, and we then know which direction you're traveling in. But more importantly, what you need to do to change that trajectory, to reverse it. So in the Million Hour Club, we test your biological age every 114 days. We also test your metabolism. So this is a test that looks at all of your nutrients. So your vitamin A, your vitamin C, your glutathione, your B vitamins, your magnesium, your proteins, your amino acids, your omega-3s, your toxins, or the heavy metals that are coming towards you. So really wonderful test of how you make energy, because we need to make energy in order to live. And that's the test that you have every 6 months as well. So there's testing, looking at data in the Million Hour Club. And as well as that, there's this sense of community and connection as well. So it's a portal where you can ask questions like, it's probably really hard to go and see your doctor, isn't it? You know, your typical GP, your average GP. I know this because I have been there, and it's really hard to speak to your GP. Appointment times can take a long time. Now we're in this realm where you've got to fill in forms and do all sorts of things before you can even make an appointment. So the idea of the Million Hour Club is to have a doctor. Hello, Dr. Alka, as your point of expertise and information and guidance. So I'm in there. You can ask any question about your health, about longevity, about something you might have read, about the food that you've just eaten, about any data that you've tracked, to get some credible advice and action tips back from me. And plus, we meet regularly live as well. So every 2 weeks, you have the opportunity to jump onto just a short 30-minute live. Yes, everyone in the Million Hour Club is invariably busy running their businesses, living an entrepreneurial life. So we keep this really short and really focused, and looking at how you can grow in health, how your longevity can expand as well. And so these are live sessions that we have that allow you to have some individualized coaching, or where you can listen to a masterclass that I'm delivering, where I'm sharing results as well, so that we can learn from results as well. And then the other thing that we do in the club is what I call sort of weekly mini missions, or 2 weekly or 3 weekly, like regular mini missions, where we have a focused target, a topic of conversation, and I'm providing sort of lots of tools and tips for how to optimize. You know, we may be talking about stress hormones and cortisol 1 week, or we're talking about all the different types of mushrooms and another week, or the different types of magnesium another week. So it's a really wonderful place to have information, have knowledge, and be the action taker, because there's lots of cheerleading and accountability that takes place, all very data driven. You know, I'm a data-driven doctor. You need to make decisions which are guided by information, really, really specific and bespoke to you. So that's what we do in the Million Hour Club. Set that goal, set that aspiration to live a long, beautiful life, and then enjoy the journey.
Fantastic. So if people want to be able to start that journey with you, what's the best way of contacting you?
Oh, yes, get in touch with me. My website, so that's got information about the Million Hour Club on there as well. So www.dralkapatel.com, DRALKAPATEL.com. And so you can have a look at anything on there. You can even book a private consultation with me through the website as well. Or if you want to send me a DM on socials, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Dr. Alka Patel UK. Always will reply. So please do drop me a message in there as well.
Fantastic. And just to remind everybody, you know, when you do go to the website, there is the LQ test on there. I remember doing that, it feels like years ago now.
Yes.
So if you want to find out what your longevity quotient is, go through it. It's a really, really fascinating kind of test. Ask some really simple but yet fundamental questions, and it's definitely worthwhile doing. It won't take you very long, and it'll just, maybe that's the bit that's going to kickstart your journey to your million-hour life ahead. And thank you very much once again, Dr. Alka, for sharing everything that you do, everything you do for everybody else as well, including for myself. And yeah, looking forward to hearing more results as you keep absolutely smashing it and reaching that great level of longevity for so many other people as well. One last and final thank you is a big thank you to everybody here for listening and taking the time out to actually listen to this episode of the Fit for Business and Life podcast. The Fit for Business Life podcast is brought to you in partnership with Sharp Fit for Life and the Business Body Network, helping busy professionals and their teams become happier, healthier, and more higher achieving in business and in life. If you'd like to join us as a guest or just get in touch and know a little bit more about the topic, then we'd love to hear from you. So just email hello@sharpfitforlife.com. So once again, thank you for listening to the Fit for Business Life podcast. The Fit for Business Life podcast is produced and presented by Wax Tie Limited. All copyright is applied.